Under the Radar, bringing movies and people together, one frame at a time.
Do 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 do. Hey guys, Rainy Young here with Under the Radar, bringing movies and people together one frame at a time. And with me tonight, I have a very special guest, great fellow critic, Mr. Chris Clemente. Hey, Chris.
Hey. I like that rendition. That should be your new theme song to the show.
That's a
Just your own.
possibility. We're gonna work on that. But if you haven't guessed through that lovely rendition, we're going to be discussing the Beverly Hills Cop franchise with the fourth installment, Beverly Hills Cop Axel F, now streaming through Netflix. And basically, it's the further adventures of Axel Foley from the Detroit detective who always gets into trouble, usually goes after criminals for revenge, for justice. We have 4 films in the series, and this is the I don't know if it's going to be, I think it might be the second to last actually, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. The new film is streaming now on Netflix, and you know, I saw it twice. I had to see it twice because the first time I really didn't like it very much. Second time I actually appreciated it a lot more for what it was, for Eddie Murphy, back in the saddle, back in Beverly Hills, up to no good, but at the same time fighting for what's right. And you've got the recurring characters, which is always a pleasure to see. You've got Judge Reinhold is back as Billy Rosewood. You've got John Ashton. You've got Paul Reiser. And even actually, my favorite part of the movie was the return of Serge, played by the great Bronson Pinchot. Where's he been all these years? But great to see everybody back in action. And yeah, Chris, good to see you again, sir. I was rambling there, but welcome back.
Yeah, no, I'm appreciating it. Yeah, thank you for having me again, Randy. Glad
Sure.
to be back, and I'm glad to talk about it. I really am. I feel like there's going to be some friction a little bit tonight. We'll see.
We'll see. We shall see. So the new movie, it is an action comedy, just like the previous 3,
Yeah.
and it's just nonstop action, and it's the only. I think one of my major criticisms, it was not as funny as I had hoped, because the first 2 Beverly Hills Cop movies had the perfect blend of action comedy. This one it leaned more towards the action, and I wanted that freshness of the originals. I don't think it was quite there in this.
I mean, I have to kind of agree to disagree with you on that one.
Yeah.
I think it was a really good balance between comedy and action,
Yeah.
definitely compared to the third one. But like, I think and if I'm jumping the gun, let me know. But I think it's truly returned to form for the franchise since one really, and 1 and 2 to be exact. But I thought it was a perfect blend. If you tell me like, hey, what scenes do you remember? I have an equal split between great action scenes and
Mm,
great comedic scenes from particularly Eddie Murphy. Yeah.
yeah. Well, even though I didn't think it was as funny as the previous installments,
Yeah.
the energy was there.
Yeah.
Like you've
Definitely.
got it. You've got Eddie Murphy, who's in his early 60s now, and he looks great. He's
Great.
running, he's shooting, he's really doing his thing, and I really commend him for that. And really, this movie and all 4 movies basically are anchored around his performance.
Yeah.
He was fantastic in the original, and that was one of the first few great action comedies, especially of the 80s.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Technically it was the first. It was the first of its kind.
yeah,
Uh, Pop quiz.
yeah, yeah.
Do you know who was supposed to star in the first Beverly Hills? I think you do.
Well, I don't know. Would he have a certain physique about him? Would he be from New York, maybe? Would he be Rambo?
Not
Would he
Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's not Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Mr. Stallone, yes, he
Yeah.
was supposed to be the original Axel Foley.
Yeah. But he did some writing for it, but he was strongly advised to do Cobra instead, right? But like
Right,
but
right.
you could just imagine
Mm.
Sylvester Stallone in Beverly Hills Cops, and it would be completely action based, you know?
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, but fair enough. But Stallone is actually pretty funny too. Have you seen Stop It, My Mom Will Shoot?
Yeah, no, he's funny when given the opportunity, but
Right.
especially in that part of his career, like
Mm.
he would have been really trying to lean on the edge of action. And I believe in
Mm.
certain articles about like the lead up to him leaving the project, like it was action heavy, you know.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
you know, so I think it would have been a totally different film.
Right.
And I think it really did mark comedic action. Like we wouldn't have a last action hero, it's like if we didn't have something like Beverly Hills Cops.
Right. We wouldn't have had like Lethal Weapon
Oh, for
and
sure. For sure.
just even the later Die Hards, like Die Hard with a
Yeah.
Vengeance is pretty comedic too. But I don't want to get too sidetracked here.
Yes.
So 1984 was the
Yeah.
original Beverly Hills Cop, and it was produced by Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer,
Yeah.
who would obviously go on to great success, more, for great to greater success. They did the sequel. They skipped the third one, interestingly enough, and then they returned for the new one this
I
year.
wonder why.
Yeah, but we're gonna get to part three soon. I know you want to talk about it, and I want to talk about it too. I have a
Hmm.
lot of thoughts, a lot of feelings. Uh,
Hmm.
but the original Beverly Hills Cop is fantastic. It introduced all the characters.
Yeah.
You've got Ronnie Cox, who fantastic actor who would
Hmm.
move on to he basically in this film in the first Beverly Hills Cop he played Bogomil, the police. I think he's a captain. Uh,
Hmm.
he would go on to basically star as the villain in RoboCop and Total Recall, and
Right.
and then rewind a little bit to the 70s where he was in Deliverance. So very
Hmm.
good actor in his own right there. Uh,
Hmm.
Beverly Hills Cop is just a classic. It's a fun movie. Eddie Murphy's in his prime. It's basically 1 year after he did Trading Places, and that was, I believe, a year after he did 48 Hours. So, and I think before that he was on SNL. So this is a fantastic period for Murphy,
Right.
and a perfect vehicle, a perfect starring vehicle for Murphy. I believe this is his
Yeah.
first time headlining a film. Like he was the lead actor in this. So Beverly Hills Cop really was a milestone for his career and for the 80s in general.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it was revolutionary to have a black actor in this role too, so like it was really just groundbreaking from a comedic standpoint, from an action standpoint, from a race and gender standpoint. So I think the first just really shaped the mold. And um the fourth one, Axel F, like it took me by surprise. I didn't really expect it until Netflix was pretty much announcing that it was going on streaming, and
Yeah.
I was kind of just standoff of it. Like, to be quite honest, like I love the original. I didn't really follow through throughout the years with the sequels,
Mhm.
like I had to go see them. And it wasn't really part of my lexicon of movies like Indiana Jones or
Mhm.
Back to the Future, Ghostbusters. It was kind of like it was there, especially if it was showing on HBO. A lot of my repertoire, or library of movies came from just watching HBO actually.
Nice.
Um, but so I was kind of a blank slate when going into the fourth one, and I I mean I don't know if I'm jumping the gun again, but like I just loved it. I really did. I was smitten by the first scene. It I thought it was going to take a turn a little bit, and we can talk about that
Mhm.
after you give your thoughts, Randy.
Sure,
But
sure.
um, there was a particular scene with Taylor Page,
Hmm.
and she was confronted by these masked villains, and I thought
Yeah.
that could have, not giving spoilers, but I thought like they could have handled that differently. So I was kind of nervous, but
Mm.
once Eddie Murphy reunited with his daughter, I thought the balance between action, comedy, but also the tenderness of dealing with an estranged daughter, high
Yeah.
stakes with an old partner. I thought there was some great back and forth, and I thought it was funny. There's certain parts where I was just laughing out loud, like that
Mm.
whole bit with her last name was very funny.
Right, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Saunders, yeah.
Yes, like that, and
Yeah.
it was stretching on. So, to go back, like I thought it was great with the comedy.
Right.
The whole introduction, or not introduction, but the reuniting with John Aston, the
That-
chief, and how he becomes a bigger part, especially towards the end.
yeah.
And what was it? There's an after credit too, like with him. Like it was just all like just very humorous and fun and
Right.
great. I thought they tied in things beautifully. Yeah.
I mean, the character development was there. You've got characters from 40 years ago
Mhm.
reprising their roles, which is fantastic,
Right.
which I loved. I know there's a lot of fan service there. Fan
Mhm.
service, doesn't get a lot of love sometimes, but I thought that aspect of Axel F really worked. The
Mhm.
estranged daughter plot was okay. It was very
Mhm.
familiar, and I wasn't really impressed by it. I didn't think Taylor Page's acting was all that great either. I mean, she's a beautiful woman, but I didn't think her acting was, up to snuff. And they threw in Joseph Gordon-Levitt as the love interest there, which was okay.
Mhm.
Again, kind of tired and predictable. Uh,
Yeah, I don't. I think he was a great addition to the movie. I thought he, like again, like I thought in the beginning, like I thought they were gonna play a little bit more with generation discrepancies, like with macho and toxic broism and stuff like that between like an older guy and a younger guy. They
right,
touched on that a little bit, but they diverted from that.
right.
And I thought he was utilized well when things got heavier with, not again, no spoilers, but when things got heavier with Eddie Murphy and Taylor Page, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt was kind of in that car scene,
Mhm.
right? I thought how they handled his character and how they kind of really ejected him into the forefront of that plot was
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
I mean, it is to be expected in a movie like this, a sequel,
Yeah.
which began 40 years ago to
Yeah.
introduce new blood.
Yeah.
Um,
You have to a
and,
little bit. Yeah.
and for what it's worth, it worked.
Yeah.
Uh, I wasn't like blown away by these new characters and their interactions with Eddie,
Yeah.
but it did serve for an entertaining film. That's for sure.
Now, what again, I think that one scene that I mentioned with some crooks going back to Taylor Page in the car, I think that could have been done a little bit better. But I think a big pain point that I did have with the film was that um, Judge Reinhold was really not used until the very end. Now, with that said, he came in with a bang, but it
Yeah.
till the end. Like there was like a large part of the movie where we don't see him at all, and I was hoping to see more of him in the
Right.
mix. Yeah.
I think he had more of a presence in part three, actually. But before we get to three, I
Yeah.
I do want to get into two
Yeah.
because I think two. We're going to do our rankings, by the way, in a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
But two, fantastic, I must say. It
Yeah.
was it kind of was a little more gritty than the
Yes.
original,
Yeah.
because it was a different director. Okay, so Martin Brest did the first one.
First one. Right.
The sequel was done by the late great Tony Scott, who he's done a ton of great films in the 80s and 90s into the 2000s, like
Yeah.
Crimson Tide. He did Top Gun a year before
Yes.
this,
Yeah.
and last
Unstoppable, right?
yeah, a lot of stuff with Denzel Washington. He directed Beverly Hills Cop 2 exceptionally well, I'd say. It's like a really, really, it's more actiony, but I think I prefer the action in part 2 than I do in part 4.
Mm-hmm.
I think it had a better flow to it. And,
Mm-hmm.
Eddie Murphy, he's still this is only his second outing. So the humor is still very fresh. And his performance here is fantastic as well. You've got Rosewood and Taggart returning. You've got, Bogomil in a small role. And Bridget Nielsen plays the villain. And also Jurgen Prochnow. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but fantastic villains, like really sinister, evil people. You
Mm-hmm.
can really like that's another thing with the franchise is that the villains are always pretty much on point. I must.
Yeah.
The first one, you've got the art dealer who's got this like very strange European accent. You don't know where the hell he's from.
Right.
He's great. The two villains in part 2 are great.
Mm-hmm.
And I just went real quick, Chris. What were your thoughts on Beverly Hills Cop 2?
I totally agree. It's not my favorite of the series, but I think it holds up with one for different reasons. I think it is grittier. I think it kind of leans maybe a little bit more on the action at times, and that's why I love it. And then it kind of does a 360 with the third, but then it goes back to but then it goes back to form on the fourth. But I really enjoyed the second one. Not as great as the first one. The first one, when I first saw it, blew me away. And
Okay.
when I think of the series, I do think of the first one. Yeah.
I think with part 2, the franchise came into its own.
Mm.
You can see how comfortable Eddie Murphy is as Axel Foley in this one.
Mhm.
It's the first time too where you see where he dons the Detroit Lions jacket.
Yeah.
He didn't have that in the first one, so part 2 he puts
Right.
that on, and it's just wonderful. I don't know, just something about it. It just has a great vibe to it.
Yep.
The tone is like perfect.
Yep.
And there's some really funny moments that mirror the original, where Axel Foley is pretending to be somebody a different character with a
Right.
different accent.
Yeah.
I believe he was Johnny Wishbone, the psychic to the stars, and there's a great scene with him and the chief of police, who's a total jerk. Uh,
Mhm.
and there's a great scene also at the Playboy Mansion where
Right.
there's some kind of altercation there. Just each scene flows into the next beautifully, and
I'll definitely give you that. I think especially with the direction of Tony Scott, I think I agree with you there that it kind of comes into fruition and it becomes the juggernaut that was Beverly Hills Cops.
right.
So I'll give you that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Also, the soundtrack is fantastic. It's great in the first one. Don't get me wrong. The opening scene where he's in the back of that truck chase scene where he's dangling from the chain.
Hmm.
And, great song there. Of course, Axel F, iconic. Uh, in part 2, they use the theme, of course, but again, there's also a really good score too. And in Tony Scott's movies, you definitely see like sunsets and or movies or scenes that take place at dawn. So there's like
Hmm.
this really interesting orangey glow about a lot of his scenes.
Oh
And
yeah.
it works really well here. It works in all of his films, and
Yep.
he was such a fantastic director. May he rest in peace.
Yeah.
But yeah, Beverly Hills Cop 2, fantastic. Then we're gonna fast forward 7 years. So from 1987 up
Hmm.
until 1994, there were no Beverly Hills Cop movies. Uh, John Landis basically was brought on board to bring back some life into the franchise with Beverly Hills Cop 3. Now, this film is not praised at all by critics and by audiences alike. Not a lot of people enjoyed it. I happen to be in the minority. I think it's a really fun movie. I love the fact that it took place at this theme park in California. called Wonderworld.
Wonderworld, right? Yeah.
Wonderworld, yeah. Basically, they used California's Great Adventure for the location, the shooting location for Wonderworld in California.
Mhm.
I think it's brilliant. Like the idea alone, I mean, maybe it wasn't executed the best way,
That's it. The execution was not there. Yeah.
but come on, Die Hard in a theme park. How can you go wrong?
Well, because it's kind of it felt like a little bit of a ripoff. If it did
Right.
feel like Die Hard in a theme park, which, if Die Hard was in a theme park and did another part to that, great. But
Right.
we don't want to hear that, or we don't want to see that from Beverly Hills Cops. Yeah.
So are you saying that if it were John McClane instead of Axel Foley, it would have done better?
I think so. Yeah.
Really?
I think Die Hard would take a turn, and maybe you wouldn't get as bad of a reception with the later sequels.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah.
guess a lot of people think it's sort of like a recycled plot line or
Yeah.
a failed Die Hard sequel.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it kind, to be honest, I think it kind of feels that way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I think I have some affection for this movie because
Yeah.
as a kid, like, this movie came out when I was 9. So I actually had the VHS, and this was one of the few VHSs I had at the time. And I would always play it. And I as a 9-year-old, I loved it. I watched it the other day as a 39-year-old, and I enjoyed it. So I mean, I think it gets so much hate, but like I think people should reevaluate it because it really is
Open up your hearts,
Yes, please, people, open up your hearts to Beverly Hills Cop 3. It's not as terrible as everyone makes it out to be.
You go from a director like Tony Scott to a director like John Landis, and like of course you're gonna expect polar opposites,
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, I love John Landis, and apparently John Landis loves Eddie Murphy because he directed him in Trading Places
Right.
and Coming to America.
Coming to America, right.
So they had a very strong working relationship. They believe in each other's work, their craft.
Yeah.
And Beverly Hills Cop 3 could have been better, but for what it was, I think it worked. So
I respect it. Like I respect it enough to say like and it felt more campy than anything else to me. And I think it definitely leaned on comedy more. I felt like so like I appreciate the fact that what it was trying to do was try to make the series feel a little bit different, excuse me, a little bit different, but like you said, it was kind of a ripoff of Die Hard just in a theme park. So
right.
I think you nailed it when you said the execution was bad, and that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like just a failed attempt, so
it's a shame.
But respect.
Yes, please. And also, it's the first time we saw Bronson Pinchot as Surge again.
Yes.
10 years after the original. You've got Judge Reinhold, of course, who's really good in this one. Unfortunately,
After watching the fourth, I miss Judge, quite a bit. Like he hasn't done much, and like I'm like, oh, he still has it. He has that charisma. He has this like almost like a Tom Hanksy, every guy, wholesome kind of energy.
And another scene, before we move on, from Beverly Hills Cop 3, the ride the spider where he saves those 2 kids from the malfunctioning spider ride.
Yeah.
That's a great scene. I don't care what you say. I mean, you got this like funky, like techno-y score with a very like kind of like a heroic Axel Foley theme, and he's looking from one spider car to the next to get these 2 kids to save safety. And I love that scene. I would always rewind it to see that scene on the beach. And that's one of my favorite moments from the movie.
I love how infectiously like loving you are towards Beverly Hills Cops 3.
It's kind of like my affection for Ghostbusters 2. I grew up with it. It's not the greatest of movies, but I grew up with it.
I'll lump that into my affection for Back to the Future 3.
Fair.
I would defend Back to the Future 3. I loved Back to the Future 3, so yeah.
That's good. So, all right, we have a few minutes left. I just want to find out from you, Mr. Clemente, what is your official
Ooh.
ranking of the Beverly Hills Cop franchise?
Um, that's good. That's a good question. And your audience shouldn't put my judgment, with a grain of sand. So please, worst to best, I would say 3.
Mm.
Sorry. I would say um, oof. I would say 3, 2,
Mm.
4, 1.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, 4 is number 2. Interesting for you. Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's also because I'm coming at this later in life where
Hmm.
um I really appreciate 4 for really going back to form. And I think especially nowadays where like legacy sequels, this is part of the legacy sequel trend.
All right.
We're gonna get Gladiator 2, that's coming up.
God,
We're gonna get Beetlejuice. So it's like
that I'm looking forward to.
we are gonna, I think, see more Eddie Murphy movies and Eddie Murphy legacy movies. Like they already passed the Shrek 5, so
Right.
I think I think we're gonna see more of him, and I think that's because of the success of number 4, and because it really brings back all the things that we loved with 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
There's like you mentioned.
It kind of sounds like you're suggesting that this is going to be like what Tom Cruise did for movies with Top Gun Maverick.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think well, I think with Tom Cruise, he's a little cray cray, but like
Yeah. He
he
gets butts in the seats.
he gets butts in and he loves what he does. Did you hear him like his praise for Twisters? Like he was
Yeah.
like, he was
Yeah.
like rattling Glenn Powell's seat, or
Yeah.
and he loved it. Like so like he should get an Oscar, an honorary Oscar. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway,
he probably will.
yeah, I think to Tom Cruise's level, probably not, but it still shows that Eddie Murphy still has the goods. It still shows that he like this is the great Eddie Murphy, not the Nutty Professor Eddie
Right.
Murphy,
Right.
not Pluto Nash,
Oh God. Or Showtime or
Or-
I Spy or
yeah. Oh,
those punkers.
Showtime was the musical, right? With
No,
Beyonce.
that was him with Robert De Niro. They play cops.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So Chris, we
Yeah,
are
yeah.
we are
Digress.
basically out of time, but I just want
Yeah.
to do my ranking real
Yes.
quick.
Go do it, Randy.
All right. So from worst to best, I'd
Yeah.
say Beverly Hills Cop 4, Axel F is the worst in my
Oh.
opinion.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, no.
I mean, I enjoyed some of it, but as a whole, the movie did not really speak to me. I'd say Beverly Hills Cop 3 is, second to worst. It's, for sentimental reasons.
It's not number 1 for you?
No, no, it is not. It is not. I'd say the first Beverly Hills Cop is my number 2.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I think that Beverly Hills Cop 2 really came into its own and was a stronger film. It had more interesting action sequences, and the humor, I think, was
Yeah.
a little
That's
more.
fair.
It was tighter. It was just a tighter film.
Yeah, and you can say that about with a lot of trilogies,
Yeah.
like that the second, which is your
Mhm.
first by a process of elimination.
Yeah, it's very good.
That it's the second usually is where it comes to be. So yeah,
Right.
I agree with you.
Indeed,
I mean, I
indeed.
agree with your logic, but
Right. My overall,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
All
Or
right, Chris. Well, we are about out of time here. Sadly, could talk all night about Eddie Murphy and
yeah,
the franchise, but I think we did okay tonight.
we did
Um,
great. Pat
yeah.
ourselves. We're patting
Oh
ourselves
yeah, yeah.
on.
And next week we'll have Bronson Pinchot interviewing him. We're gonna interview him. No, just kidding.
I was like,
That'd be
what?
that'd be incredible. That's a bucket list item to interview Mark Lynn Baker and Bronson Pinchot
There.
together.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
That would be
Uh,
phenomenal. Yeah.
yes, it would be. Chris, any plugs for you before we say goodnight to everybody?
You can read some of my writings, past writings with We Got You Covered. And just follow me on Facebook, Instagram, not so much X, but Instagram, Facebook under Chris Clemente. Yeah.
Lovely. Lovely.
Lovely.
And as for me, you can check out new episodes of Under the Radar on Slam Radio through SiriusXM channel 145 every Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And also the video portion of this podcast will be on every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. So feel free to watch, feel free to listen. And of course, feel free to visit the Under the Radar YouTube channel, subscribe and share. And that about does it, I think. Chris Clemente, thank you so much, as always. I'm going to play the theme now.
Yeah.
So I'm Randy Unger. This has been Under the Radar, bringing movies and people together, one frame at a time. We'll see you next time. Take care.